Hey everybody, Jerry Wagner here, Vice President of HVAC Technical Training. This is the 8th and last in a series of videos to coincide with the GREE Sapphire Installation Manual. Although we are using the Sapphire as our working example, all GREE mini-split products are similar in their installation requirements. Okay, let's start on page number 21 with testing and inspection. We're now going to pressure test the line set and the indoor unit that we just installed. We're going to use nitrogen, so we obviously need a cylinder of nitrogen. We're going to connect the regulator of the tank directly to the service port of the outdoor unit. The regulator of the tank, two gauges. The one on the right tells you the tank pressure. The one on the left tells you the pressure coming out of the regulator. So we're going to open up the valve on the nitrogen tank. That pressurizes that first gauge, and it looks like we got about 2,000 psi in the tank. So by turning the handle on the regulator clockwise, we start to dial in the desired pressure. And the desired test pressure in this example is 500 psi. Now we're going to open up the ball valve on our hose going to the service port of the outdoor unit so that nitrogen can flow into the line set and our indoor unit and pressurize it. Very important that you close the valve on the nitrogen tank at this point. We're going to see if that pressure will hold for at least 30 minutes. If it does, we don't have a leak. Use a quality micron gauge to measure and validate the system vacuum. We're going to use the Supco VG64. It's very inexpensive, it's a quality gauge, and it's very easy to understand. And Supco has videos on YouTube to help you use it. Okay, it's time to pull a vacuum or evacuate the line set and the new indoor unit. So let's go through the components we're going to need to do this. We're going to need a vacuum pump. I like to use the Super Evac manifold by Yellow Jacket. We're going to need our micron gauge. You'll notice I'm using a ball valve on the micron gauge. That's important, and I'll explain that as we move forward. And lastly, you can see the connection of the vacuum pump to the service port of the outdoor unit. We turn on the vacuum pump and then keep our eyes on the micron gauge. Ultimately, we want to pull a vacuum down to 500 microns. Now that could take anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours, depending upon the size of the system. Now I time-lapsed this video in order to speed things up. This is not representative of the actual time it took me to pull the vacuum down to 452 microns. One of the great features of the Yellow Jacket Super Evac manifold is that it has isolation valves. By closing this ball valve on the manifold, I can isolate the vacuum pump from the system. With the vacuum pump now off and isolated, we want to see that vacuum hold. It's going to creep up a little bit, but as long as it holds under 700 microns for 15 minutes, we're good to go. I want to go back and explain the use of this ball valve on the vacuum gauge. If we had run a line set longer than the 25-foot factory pre-charge, I could close that valve, disconnect the micron gauge, and connect the valve directly to a cylinder of R410 refrigerant in order to add refrigerant at this time. Let's turn to page 22 of the installation manual. It's now time to disconnect the vacuum pump from the service port of the outdoor unit. Let's remove the caps of the liquid and suction valves of the outdoor unit and open up those valves, or what some call backseat the valves. That will allow the pre-charged refrigerant in the outdoor unit to flow into the line set and into the indoor unit. In this installation, we don't have to add additional refrigerant because we stayed within the 25-foot pre-charge of the outdoor unit. However, if we had run a line set longer than 25 feet, we would have to add refrigerant, and we explained how to do that in video number 1 of this sequence. In applications where the outdoor unit is mounted 30 feet or more above the indoor unit, an oil return bend or trap will be required every 20 feet. This is the only time a trap is required. We can test the condensate drain for proper drainage simply by taking a silo cup of water and pouring it directly onto the face of the evaporator coil. And here you can see that the water that we poured directly on the evaporator coil is properly draining through the condensate drain exterior to the building. Okay, let's turn to page number 23 of the installation manual, and let's start putting the system through its motions. We turn the power on to the system, we verify that the power icon of the indoor unit is illuminated, and we make sure that no error codes are being displayed. Now via the remote control, we'll turn the system on. And let's verify that the outdoor fan motor is running, that the indoor fan motor is running, and that the indoor unit is discharging cool air. It was 100 degrees in New York the day that this install was completed, so we're not going to be able to test the system in the heating mode right now. And lastly, let's be sure that the unit turns off properly via the wireless remote. Well, you know what, guys? We are done. I hope this series of 8 videos documenting the installation of a Sapphire 9000 BTU system has been helpful to you. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.